You don't understand. There are only 3 ages for women in Hollywood. Babe, district attorney, and driving Miss Daisy. And right now, I want to be young.
Since its very inception, Hollywoodland has been a superficial machine powered by perfect teeth and chiseled jaws. One where the gorgeous are known as actors, while the less immediately striking are called character actors. Which is just... Of course, none of this is the fault of the Margot Robbies or Ryan Reynolds of the industry. If anything, the objectification and hypersexualization they're forced to contend with is just another way to dismiss and dehumanize their obvious talents. It's why the biggest career curse in film and television isn't a publicity fiasco or box office flop. It's aging. A natural progression treated like an unfortunate affliction and wielded with a despicable bias towards women.
I'm not ready to play someone who is grotesque, either from being thought of as just a very, very older woman, someone wanting to be young in a very desperate way, or someone who's given up.
Back in 1992, the often overlooked Death Becomes Her scrapped tooth and nail against this gender disparity and the exploitative practices of a beauty-obsessed medium, blowing the sands of time directly into the face of the audience and taking a shovel to the ones clutching the hourglass.
Bitch! Girls! Let's just calm down. I'm sure we can settle this peacefully and... What?
Death Becomes Her charts the stormy rivalry between 2 career-focused women, the once reserved writer Helen and preening actor Madeline. As these frenemies seek the fleeting validation of the male gaze, they each turn to a mysterious potion that promises eternal youth, the consequences of which are as merciless and cruel as aging itself. If that sounds like a terrific pitch fit for Tales from the Crypt, that's because it was. Initially intended as another lurid installment of the anthology franchise, the concept was fleshed out to a feature-length parable before eventually gaining the interest of technical trendsetter Robert Zemeckis. What could have quite easily coasted by on its admittedly delightful premise, zombie Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep, bloomed into something altogether far more prescient. Before the supernatural shenanigans begin, the comedic delights come from how these characters garishly contrast with the actors playing them. Helen, as performed by starlet-turned-esteemed comedic performer Hawn, starts off playing against type as whispering and bookish, only to hit the rock bottom of crazy cat lady oblivion before shedding all modesty as an amped-up, undead Jessica Rabbit.
Sex. Sex.
Streep's Madeline lacks all the dignity and grace of her real-life counterpart. She's a fading celebrity of zero esteem who'd never get within 2 miles of an Academy Award, and who reserves her most convincing performances for feigning humanity in her day-to-day life.
Matt?
Hawn and Streep, both of whom have built impeccable careers playing strong, emboldened characters, begin Death Becomes Her as the polar opposite of everything they represent. Each act of violence is bone-crushing in its brutality, but completely lacking the blood of a beating heart. Every romantic encounter is brimming with lust, but devoid of further connection. One of the film's writers, David Cope, went so far as to call it Night of the Living Dead is helmed by the director of My Fair Lady, which is far more apt and clever than any comparison I could make. This is gorgeous opulence, undercut with the stench of decay.
Ow! What are you, nuts?
Helen and Madeline are content to be collected and maintained like classic cars by the utterly unimpressive source of their affections, Ernest. Portrayed with inebriated impotence by Bruce Willis, also acting very much against his charismatic hypermasculine type, Ernest's hold over these women feels off. That is, until we're introduced to the lackluster array of additional male characters, and it all clicks. All the men in this film are parasitic, secondary concerns leeching off the antagonistic heroines. As much an empty sign of status to the women who covet them, as they are the spoils of whoever succeeds. Lyle, the secret socialite who supplies the immortality elixir, has 3 placeholder assistants, generically named Tom, Dick and Harry, who function as eye candy accessories and nothing more. Madeline's cosmetic surgeon is a means to an end and a vile, lip-chewing weirdo, while the other male character cameos throughout aren't worth the increased word count. This is a story about women that men needlessly interject themselves into as if to justify their arbitrary command of the room.
I'll just be upstairs.
In Helen and Madeline's vanity-hewn hopes of achieving the same careless autonomy, each projects an air of larger-than-life aplomb and brazen determination, bending over backwards and tearing themselves apart to gain a taste of the life Ernest carries around like an unflattering mustache. They'll stop at nothing to hold back the tides of aging, because unlike the men, this inextricable fact of life silently determines their careers and social standing.
Wrinkled, wrinkled little star. Hope they never see the scars.
Ernest doesn't concern himself with any of this because, well, he knows he's not going to be penalised for having the audacity to grow older. The MacGuffin that is the miracle elixir may at first seem nonsensical, but its manicured spokesperson and exotic origins are closer to the natural wonders and faux mysticism shilled by the likes of Gwyneth Paltrow than we'd probably like to admit. Cosmetics, creams, beauty treatments, plastic surgery, diet plans, workout regimens. These are billion-dollar businesses built off the backs of fear-mongering, ageist rhetoric that conflates self-worth with the elasticity of a woman's skin. This film isn't a scalpel-making incisive cuts and critiques. It's a shotgun blast to the gut of these lecherous industries that perpetuate their own existence by making mortality a terrifying proposition that must be stopped at any and all costs. As noted by Danielle Friedman writing for The Cut, Death Becomes Her is a cartoonish warning, an over-the-top parable about letting fear get the better of us, suggesting prizing beauty above all else comes at a cost, a dripping, oozing, grotesque, maybe even eternal cost. When Helen and Madeline opt to go full-on zombie, they're already in a lose-lose situation where growing old gracefully is no longer a viable option. You either watch your opportunities for success slowly peel away with time, or find yourself ridiculed by venomous tabloids for trying to own your image and rebel against gravity. Which is what makes this film such a liberating, intoxicating joy. Helen and Madeline aren't going quietly into that good night, because why the hell should they?
Blah, 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 blah.
After spending their youth fretting over how they're perceived, they choose to become a Dada-esque pastiche of their former selves. Rather than clawing at each other over the affections of the most beige man who ever lived, they give him a taste of what it means to be used exclusively as a totem of beauty and status. The result? He goes insane almost immediately. What could have been a pious lecture about the ills of lip fillers and facelifts is instead an affirmation that these women may not have needed any of that, but it's their choice to make, and their bodies to experiment with and destroy as they wish. If all of this seems like a hard sell for a state-of-the-art, effects-driven farce, the muted response from critics and cinemagoers unfortunately agree. Until recently, that is, when Helen and Madeline's brawling feud was lovingly resuscitated and given cult classic status by the adoring LGBTQ+ community. While the film's creators seem ecstatic yet bemused by this ever-growing fanbase, executive producer of RuPaul's Drag Race, Tom Campbell, sheds some light on Death Become Her's 21st century reappraisal in a Vanity Fair retrospective. They're fighting for beauty, they're against the system. We root for the undead divas because they're trying to win a game that's rigged against them. Drag Race Season 5 winner and shovel-wielding superfan Jinx Monsoon also chimed in. I think this is a trait that runs throughout the queer community, the obsession with hyper-feminine female villains, willing to spray paint themselves and fill themselves with cement just to uphold themselves and try and stay in command. And with its long overdue re-evaluation as an iconic and empowering brawl between two of Hollywood's most cherished performers, there's a very simple reason Death Becomes Her holds up so well nearly 3 decades on. It's fantastic. While the sardonic blend of intelligence, social commentary, and largely seamless and truly grotesque CGI is all essential, it's the ageless morbidity of its comedic edge that keeps it all from falling apart. As far as Robert Zemeckis' filmography is concerned, he's made movies that are more unanimously beloved, obviously striking visual events, and more uncannily terrifying, but I'd argue he's yet to mix all those disparate elements into a treat as stylish and perfectly paced as this. If you're looking for a cross between the disturbing allegory of Fruit Chan's dumplings and the knockdown drag-out scrap of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, there's no better company to spend eternity with than this fabulous twisted pair. A Goldie Hawn has the best hair in the game for our Patreon producers Jennifer C, Claire MD, Becky O, and Nicholas Le-Revere, and a Meryl Streep is an underrated comedic powerhouse for all these amazing folks who support us over at Patreon. What are your memories of Death Becomes Her? When I saw this film at a very young age, it scared the shit out of me. Hit up the comments with your top 3 Robert Zemeckis films, or just spout off a bunch of garbage because you know YouTube loves that engagement. If you're not already, make sure you're subscribed, click like, and if you're in a position to do so, maybe head on over to our Patreon, where you can support the channel while getting your name in the credits, access to our Discord, and a membership to the In Frame Out Film Club. As always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, this is In Frame Out.